The 1980s were a decade filled with iconic horror stories that continue to terrify readers to this day. From Stephen King's chilling tales to the haunting work of Clive Barker, the horror genre was in its prime during this time. In this article, we will explore the top 5 scariest stories that were published in 1980. 1. The Shining by Stephen King. Stephen King's The Shining was published in 1980 and has since become a horror classic. The story follows Jack Torrance, a struggling writer who takes a job as the caretaker of the Overlook Hotel during the winter months. As the snow falls and the hotel becomes isolated, the supernatural forces within begin to emerge, driving Jack to the brink of insanity. The story is a masterclass in building tension and suspense, with King's vivid descriptions of the hotel's eerie atmosphere leaving readers feeling as if they are right there with the characters. The novel's themes of isolation and the breakdown of the family unit are still relevant today and continue to make The Shining a terrifying read. 1. The Mist by Stephen King. Another Stephen King classic, The Mist was originally published in 1980 as part of a horror anthology called Dark Forces. The story takes place in a small town in Maine that becomes engulfed in a thick, impenetrable mist. As a group of townspeople become trapped in a local supermarket, they soon discover that the mist is home to monstrous creatures that are hungry for human flesh. King's use of claustrophobic settings and vivid descriptions of the grotesque creatures make The Mist a chilling read. The novel's exploration of the human psyche under extreme stress and the fragility of societal order adds an extra layer of horror to an already terrifying story. 1. The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber is a collection of short stories that reimagines classic fairy tales with a dark and macabre twist. Originally published in 1979, the book gained widespread popularity in 1980 and has since become a cult classic in the horror genre. The collection includes stories such as The Company of Wolves, which explores the darker side of the classic Little Red Riding Hood tale, and The Bloody Chamber, a retelling of Bluebeard that takes on a much more sinister tone. Carter's writing is both poetic and haunting, with each story leaving a lasting impression on the reader. 1. The Stand by Stephen King. Stephen King's epic novel The Stand was originally published in 1978, but a revised and expanded edition was released in 1980. The story follows a group of survivors after a deadly plague wipes out most of the world's population. As society breaks down and a battle between good and evil ensues, the survivors must navigate a dangerous new world and confront their own inner demons. With over 1,000 pages, The Stand is a massive undertaking, but King's masterful storytelling and rich character development make it a page-turner from beginning to end. The novel's exploration of the human condition in a post-apocalyptic world is both harrowing and thought-provoking, making it a standout in the horror genre. 1. The Fog by James Herbert. Published in 1980, The Fog is a horror novel by British author James Herbert. The story takes place in a small English town that becomes enveloped in a thick fog. As the fog grows thicker, the residents begin to experience terrifying hallucinations and violent outbursts. Herbert's vivid descriptions of the fog's effects on the town's inhabitants and the gruesome scenes that follow make The Fog a truly terrifying read. The novel's themes of isolation, madness, and the supernatural are expertly woven together to create a spine-chilling story that stays with the reader long after the last page. Overall, the horror stories that were published in 1980 are still widely read and celebrated to this day. These stories tap into our deepest fears, exploring themes of isolation, the breakdown of societal order, and the fragility of the human psyche. Whether it's Stephen King's The Shining or Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber, these stories continue to captivate readers and push the boundaries of the horror genre. In conclusion, the 1980s were a decade that saw some of the best horror writing of all time. From supernatural beings to post-apocalyptic worlds, these stories are as chilling today as they were when they were first published. They remind us of the darker aspects of the human experience and the horrors that can lurk just beneath the surface. These 5 stories are only a small sample of the incredible horror writing from the 1980s, but they remain some of the scariest and most unforgettable stories ever written.